we always jumping up and down about the things going on in Chicago, how talking about black on black crime, which I'm not going to discuss that openly going forward, because even though it is a problem, it's a problem that is basically thrown in the faces of the black community when basically the white community is looking to try to defend itself for its ills. And when black groups speak out about various things, the black on black crime situation is always basically thrown up in someone's face like there's no such thing as white on white crime, and it's not in similar percentages. So anyway, this is the report regarding Chicago and the Chicago police, and basically, they are a bunch of gangsters with badges and guns.
The Police Accountability Task Force has released a scathing report on the Chicago Police Department. The report, entitled Recommendations for Reform, Restoring Trust Between the Chicago Police and the Communities They Serve, highlights the fact that the Chicago Police Department's own data gives validity to the belief that police have no regard for the sanctity of life when it comes to people of color. For example, from 2008 to 2015, though African Americans are only a third of the population in Chicago, 74% of the people killed or shot by officers were black. Meanwhile, only 14% of shooting victims were Hispanic and only 8% were white. During the same time frame, police in Chicago also disproportionately used tasers against African Americans as well. 76% were black, 13% were Hispanic, while only 8% were white. But the point of the report was to actually develop recommendations on how to improve the police department. With over 100 recommendations to improve the police department, here are a few. Create an Inspector General for Public Safety. Expand the body cam pilot program. Establish a Deputy Chief of Diversity and Inclusion. Create a Community Safety Oversight Board. Evaluate and improve the training officers receive with respect to youth. Joining me on the panel today to discuss this are Ralph Chittums of the Republican Party, Michelle Bernard, political analyst and attorney with the Bernard Center for Women, Politics, and Public Policy, and David Swerdlick, assistant editor at the Washington Post. So, to you all, is this report, does it really cover and make the types of substantive recommendations that are going to be necessary to improve or increase the public's faith in their police department?
Well, a report is just a piece of paper. The question is anything actually going to be done subsequent to this report? You've had, the Foxes now policing the Foxes, writing a report about the Foxes, and Rahm Emanuel has appointed a fox to oversee the foxes that were terrorizing the chickens. So let's see what actually happens.
That was an incredible analogy. But I got you. Dave, go ahead.
I see the analogy, right? You have the fox on the hen house or the wolf, wolf to catch a wolf or whatever, but it's not a laughing matter. But I do take Ralph's point, right? What happens next after the report, Wilmer? I think the recommendations are good. I think it's good that the report is out there and these issues are on the table. When you see a stat that people, I think, had a sense of this, but now you've got the numbers in front of you. In a city that's roughly a third African American, that roughly 3/4 of the police killings and police woundings or injuries of citizens are toward African American citizens. There's clearly an imbalance in policing, and clearly needs to be a redirect of the way police approach the African American community. My thing, as always, is going back to this idea of, look, at the core of this, to me, is not so much those specific bullet points as much as police have to understand. Police have a tough job. It always bears repeating. They have a dangerous job, and you have to have police. But we have to get back to this idea in our cities that police serve the public. The public is not there to conform to the police. The police are there as public servants who are paid by taxpayers, who do a difficult and dangerous job, but they work for we the people, not the other way around.
Look, I looked at the report and I've looked at some of the articles that have been written about it, and my first reaction is, all you've done is confirm something that most of us already knew.
So the response is, duh.
Exactly. I mean, the report seems to me, I'm glad that the report was done. I understand that police have a very difficult job. I am hoping that what will happen is that people who will say, typically, it's your fault. The statistics are this high because it's black on black crime, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm hoping those people will look at the report and begin to understand that there is a problem within the culture. Rahm Emanuel, I believe, was, sort of quoted as saying, and I'm paraphrasing here, the report is a report, but we already know racism exists in the country. And the question is, how are we going to deal with it? So, from my perspective, it's another report. More recommendations. Is anything going to change? Hopefully, when you have an independent police review board that was criticized in here for basically getting complaints and doing absolutely nothing about it, how do you give the public any sense that the replacement, if it's a civilian review board, which I think is what is being recommended, is going to be any different?
Well, and there are a couple of things. I did not get through the entire report, but I did not see any mention of Holman Square, the black site in Chicago where police for years have been taking people off the books and torturing them. I saw nothing about that. No one has been fired as a result of this. Names weren't really mentioned, and because there are people in charge, and the people in charge have either been setting a tone or have been following a tone. And finally, Chicago doesn't exist in a vacuum. So New York and stop and frisk, for example, this is part of a national systemic problem that fixing Chicago, if in fact that could happen, is not going to fix the problem.
I think that I believe that the hope is that the person that Rahm Emanuel has selected to become the new quote-unquote permanent police chief is a person who, at least from what I've read, is a person who grew up in public housing, and I'm assuming that the belief is that he will be more sensitive to the concerns of the African American community.
Does Rahm Emanuel need to go?
Go ahead.
That's it. But also, Rahm Emanuel purposely buried the police report on the killing of that young man. The video simply so that he could get reelected.
Right.
And now he unilaterally selected the next chief of police. That chief of police is now beholden not to the citizens, not to the committee, not to the council, but to the mayor who gave him the job. So I have no confidence that anything's going to change.
David?
Well, there's potential for things to change, and if any, but I don't have a whole lot of confidence either. When you look, but here's something. When you look at the last election, the district attorney Anita Alvarez, she was voted out, and one of the key issues where she lost the confidence of the public was this idea that in the Laquan McDonald case, in a video that law enforcement had for months and didn't release it, there was not this recognition in the part of leadership that they had to be forthcoming and transparent and accountable towards folks. Yeah.
Another story making headlines.
All right, so on that one, my opinion, you can lump all of those recommendations in, and to me, what does that mean? That means there's a problem, and you can go, in my opinion, to the majority of police forces in the country and take a look and be able to make those same recommendations for the most part. I'm going to say some, not all, and in my opinion, majority, but not all, okay? So there's a problem, okay? And there's a problem of racism in police departments. There's a problem as far as systemic racism in the country. And a lot of this stuff is going to continue. I don't give a damn what you do as long as we have issues, and I'm going to say primarily economic issues. Okay, I've started to hear quite a bit that you do not have major issues in communities that have credit scores of 700. Okay, and that, in my opinion, is true. What does a credit score of 700 mean? It means that, number one, you have a job, okay, for the most part, or you had a job and you are retired and demonstrated the ability to handle your financial obligations, okay, over obviously long periods of time, okay. A job, you handle your finances, okay, which in turn you have respect for yourself, your property, and your community, okay. You basically, for the most part, and not always, handle your family, i.e. your children, where your children basically have some semblance of manners, okay, and respect most of the time, but not always. There are always exceptions, but for the most part, your kids are pretty decent. The things of that nature, that's basically what a 700 credit score basically trans into, in my opinion. Now, everybody's going to have their own opinion, and you do what you got to do. You decide what you got to decide. But when you're talking about credit scores of 500, okay, 580, now you got an issue, because now that person basically is juggling. They're not paying their bills on time. They don't have enough money. Even if they are working, which quite a few are. They got issues and they're juggling, and there is additional pressure on them, okay? Because if there wasn't pressure on them, they probably would be able to handle their obligations, but then they wouldn't have a credit score of 580. So, okay, I look at it more so on an economic viewpoint. I take an economic viewpoint, i.e., you get a job, work that job, you get some help from family, friends, whatever, okay? You buckle down, you handle your business. You're not out there with 4 or 5 kids running around that you can't afford. You have discipline, okay? Now, again, we're going to have our kids, and we've been having sex since the beginning of time, and the last 2, male and female or whatever, are going to have it till the end of time. But you have to be responsible about it, okay? And if you can't handle something, then don't create something that you can't handle. It's as simple as that. Have your fun, but be responsible. All right, anyway, this is a little bit of a rant here. But again, people, this information, as Michelle Bernard said, is not something that we didn't already know. We knew it. Now it's now in Chicago, it's in black and white. What they do about it is what they do about it. Again, I don't have any confidence in Rahm Emanuel. They need to get his ass out of there. They basically just need to clean house. And then they need to strip the powers from these police unions and put the fear of God in these police officers, that if they do the right thing, we'll have your back. But if you do the wrong thing, then, you will be in jeopardy. So just think about it.